I'm Mary Nee. I'm the chair of the Eastham Zoning Task Force. Let me just tell you a little bit about this meeting. We're starting now at 4 o'clock. This will run till about 5:20, 5:25. We have another group, another session, which will be the exact same presentation that we scheduled to begin at 5:30 to 7. We did that because we were trying to accommodate parent schedules and a variety of things. So the way the meeting is going to be structured is we have kind of an interesting video, very short, about 3.5 minutes or so. I will then spend about, hopefully not more than about 20 minutes or so, giving the background of who we are, why we did this, what the research we did, sort of the conceptual things we looked at. And then Paul will do the second half where he will go through all of the specific proposals. And then we want to have time for questions. Paul has some index cards that he will distribute. I mean, we will have people, we will certainly let people come up and speak, but if you're going through the presentation and something dawns on you and you have a question, please, put it on the index card. Paul or Jackie can pick it up and we'll make sure we get those in. So, some folks are more comfortable getting up speaking and might want just have their questions answered. So with that, I'm going to thank a group. Let me just thank a few people. We can get this out of the way. The Eastham Zoning Task Force, there's a number of people that are represented here today. We have Kevin Gatlin, who's a representative with the Planning Board, Pat Canavan, who is also on the Planning Board. We have Martin Ridge, who's on the ZBA, the Zoning Zoning Board of Appeals. And we also have, who are we missing? Oh, Carolyn McPherson, who is the clerk of the task force as well as the chair of the Housing Trust. We had a couple members who stepped down. This has been a 2-year project. A couple members stepped down last May because of, one was Bob Bruns when he was elected to the select board. He had a transition then. And Jim Kilvahan, who has been with us actually for almost four years of labor here. He's traveling the country with his wife, and I'm delighted to see him today, but he really had some other commitments. So I also want to thank, supporting the task force is Paul Legg, who's terrific. His assistant planner, Jackie O'Rourke, and Devin, who does our computers. We're going to show you a little video right now, and they put this together. And so, given the technology, we wrote a summary report, which is on the town website, of all of our proposals, and they fed that report into AI. And then they merged it with the pictures that the landscape architect provided us, put it in and hit send, and where do you see the magic of AI? It's unbelievable. So without further ado, Paul, can you get the video back?
I will warn everyone, AI does not get pronunciation totally correct. So I'm just going to get out of the way. It says Eastham, and everybody will pick up on it. We couldn't fix it, but otherwise, it was a wonderful thing.
At this year's annual town meeting, zoning amendments will be proposed for North Eastham's business districts. Eastham stands at a transformative moment. Our vision is simple yet powerful: live, work, play. These proposed zoning amendments are more than regulations. They're a blueprint for our community's future. The framework for these amendments is a type of zoning called form-based code. Form-based codes are organized around the physical forms of buildings and sites, rather than the segregation of land uses. Unlike conventional zoning, form-based zoning focuses on how buildings relate to the streetscape and surrounding area, with less emphasis on the uses inside the buildings. Form-based codes use pictures, diagrams, and simple language to describe types of development desirable to the community. They foster predictable development patterns and aim to create a traditional New England village that honors our unique local character. The proposed zoning amendments integrate several critical needs and goals of our community, including a walkable town center to support year-round community, affordable and attainable housing to meet Eastham's housing needs, support for year-round business through increased customer base and workforce, economic development opportunities, particularly in the trade park, transportation improvements along Route 6 and connector roads, support for environmentally sensitive design and construction, and enhanced green spaces within properties. We're reimagining North Eastham as a vibrant village center, a place where walking to your favorite cafe, finding meaningful work, or connecting with our community becomes effortless. A place where neighbors meet, businesses thrive, and every generation has an opportunity to live, work, and play. The proposed amendments will help diversify our housing options, incentivizing the creation of missing middle housing, including top-of-the-shop apartments, townhouses, and multi-generational living spaces. These options will create spaces for young families, working professionals, and longtime residents to live, grow, and support each other. A redesigned transportation network will make Eastham more accessible than ever. Imagine Brackett Road as a classic main street filled with local shops and restaurants, with parking lots located at the back of the buildings to make room for sidewalks, street trees, and open spaces. Picture Route 6 improved with sidewalks, safer curb cuts, and protected turn lanes. Think of the potential benefits of creating a new roadway connection between Brackett Road and the Tea Time property, expanding opportunities for our local businesses with access to new street frontage and the ability to maximize the use of their properties. The trade park represents a key component to Eastham's economic future. Connecting Holmes Road to Route 6 will increase trade space, support emerging industries, create workforce housing, and position Eastham as a town that can support our current business community and accommodate future economic activity. This is about building resilience, opportunity, and shared prosperity. The proposed zoning amendments represent exciting opportunities for change. However, it is important to know that property and business owners within the district won't face mandatory immediate changes. The town is committed to a collaborative approach, working alongside property owners when and if they are ready to update or redevelop their sites. We're creating a framework for sustainable growth that respects our heritage while embracing our potential. The proposed zoning amendments will be voted on at town meeting on Monday, May 5th. Curious to learn more? Town staff are ready to answer your questions. Full details are available on the Town of Eastham website.
So again, I'm going to give you some of the background, and we'll hopefully quickly get to Paul, that he can fill in lots of the details. As you saw the last image there, we have written approximately about a 30-page summary report, which has more detail than this PowerPoint, and lots of illustrations, which are helpful, as well as some illustrations of other housing opportunities that are going on in Brewster and Orleans and Wellfleet. So it would be very helpful to check out that report. There's also what you will see at town meeting, and it's really hard. We have to legally put the entire code for the business district in the warrant, and then we have to black line everything that's coming out, and we represent in blue what has been added. Unfortunately, we have taken about 50 pages out of this document. It's still 80 pages long. So it's a little mind-numbing. If you have trouble sleeping at night, you can read a couple pages of that, and you might be out. But so that's all there. So after this meeting, we're going to have, there'll be other opportunities to comment, but I would strongly suggest you might want to check out that website. So what is the Zoning Task Force? The Zoning Task Force was created by the Select Board in 2020 to look at zoning issues and make recommendations. We are an advisory committee. We get recommendations that come from town staff and the Select Board. We look at topics, we do research, we do analysis, and we come forward with proposals. So we are not a regulatory board. We are simply offering recommendations. We'll get into it a little bit later, but amending the DCPC, which is the legal name for this district, is a complicated and involved process. So again, we'll talk about that. The task force charge, again, was to look at the DCPC, which covers an area that roughly runs from Arnold's Restaurant up to the Chocolate Cafe, down Brackett Road to the bike trail, and then the other side of Brackett Road, I think it's Old Colony, down to Massasoit. So it's a confined area of about 2 square miles, I think, approximately, yeah. So an important point about the DCPC, and I'll give you some background here. This was first adopted by Eastham at the town meeting in 2017. And the history was that a year or so before that, there was a proposal to bring a Dollar General into the town. And people were really concerned about how that would change the character of the town. And the town looked for ways in which they could manage that. And one of the options that was available was to collaborate with the Cape Cod Commission. The Cape Cod Commission has legislative authority to put in these overlay districts. And what it allowed the town to do is when they agreed to put an overlay district in, it sort of froze everything for a year so that the town and the Cape Cod Commission could work on the proposal. That is what happened, and that was what was approved in 2017. Why are we updating it now? Think about 2017. That was prior to many, many of the plans that the town has subsequently embraced. Everything from the strategic plan, the master plan for Town Plaza and Tea Time, the housing production plan, the marketing study, all of those things came after the DCPC was approved. And what we did when we started looking at this, we realized there were some big gaps. And we'll talk about some big gaps. For example, with Tea Time, it wasn't even zoned in an area in which you could build mixed-use housing. So really all of the conceptual things that people have been talking about for several years, we needed to change the underlying zoning for that. There's some other things. Paul will go into the form-based code and the architectural design. The current DCPC simply states, as far as architectural design, we want a traditional New England village, comma, see Cape Cod Commission's guidelines. There is no detail, no specificity about what the town would like to see in terms of shape, height, density, materials, etc. And so that was really lacking. And it's really the ambiguity of that sort of leaves it wide open, you know, when folks come in to propose developments. You know, we could be in tug of wars all the time. So really updating this to clarify and with detail the architectural standards, as well as get the zoning areas correct, was really some of the big impetus for this. There are many things that we have not changed in this. One of the underlying elements of the original DCPC is there's 6 sub-districts. And it's in our report, and I think we have some maps that Paul will go over. But basically the theory is that around Brackett Road, it's zoned as the core commercial. You step down on either side, you get transitional commercial, limited commercial, there's a trade park, and then at the ends, there's residential. The density and the allowed uses and the intent of those districts, again, more concentration around Brackett Road and Route 6 and things to less intense as you go down. That was driven by a desire both from the town as well as the Cape Cod Commission not to have commercial sprawl, really to the sort of imagery of some of the commercial districts we see around the Cape, whether it's Route 28, up in Weymouth, Route 53, up in Saugus, Route 1, where sort of everything was parcel by parcel developed, and you ended up after 20 or 30 years with something that was really not the kind of attractive place you want to be. So those 6 districts and the intent of those six districts, we have not changed. We've not made any recommendations that those change. Within those districts, You will see some proposals around switching some of the boundary lines, again, to accommodate tea time, as well as a lot more architectural detail and specificity. I think one other point that I want to make just is we have a lot of pretty pictures up here. We, as the Zoning Task Force, are recommending zoning in terms of how land should be used and some of the design standards. We are not developers. We are not, when you see an envisioned bracket road, that is conceptually what the zoning would allow. But all of those decisions are going to be made through the regular process of the developers, private developers proposing projects, and the town reviewing, the planning boards reviewing and approving those projects. So we are sort of putting in place or proposing the framework for, when a developer comes, they will see the zoning, they will see buildings closer to the street, parking in the rear, opportunities for housing, et cetera. That will be the framework, the zoning framework. And again, developers will propose this individually. As the video mentioned, this could be a very long-term prospect because this will all be driven by when private owners want to redevelop. There is no mandates here. No one has to change what they're doing, whether it's Arnold's or Red Barn or whatever. If they want to continue running their business for as long as they want to run the business the way it looks now, they can do that. At the point that they make a decision to redevelop their site, or they sell their site and someone else comes in to redevelop, that's when the majority of these will be implemented. So one of the advantages for implementing the zoning is that two of the largest parcels, the town plaza as well as tea time, are owned by the town. There is, and Jackie Beebe had presented to the select board a couple weeks ago, the notion that we will have the zoning amendments at town meeting. We will have possibly wastewater at town meeting. But when those happen, certainly the regulatory framework, they will have the ability to issue RFPs for those sites. And so one of the good things is that the town will be controlling that process. They will be asking developers to come in with proposals that will reflect this new zoning. So we're hoping that if the town-owned parcels can jumpstart this new vision, hopefully we will see other businesses continue. The properties in Eastham are pretty old. As you go up and down these streets, I mean, we love them, they're familiar to us, but they're 50, 60, 70-year-old buildings. We need to anticipate that they physically are going to have to be upgraded and replaced. And so one of the benefits of doing this now and really laying out a plan for the whole district is we as a town will not be sort of engaged in debates on individual parcels in terms of what it will look like and how it will be. That framework will have been established. So that was one of the driving forces there. And obviously, one of the things that's going to happen is that we may be in a situation where things may happen quickly, or things may take 10 or 20 years. I mean, again, this is going to be driven primarily by the private sector, with the exception of, what opportunities the town works with the state and others for housing funding. The private business development will happen on their time. And I opened a drawer and everything fell out this morning, and I don't know if this is karma, but this book of quotes opened up, and it opened up to this page, and I looked at this and I said, oh my God. And this is a Chinese proverb. It says, one generation plants the trees, another gets the shade. And I thought to myself, oh, this is karma, because what we're going to do is very long term here. So, okay. So the overall concept, again, is live, work, and play. We are concentrating or proposing to concentrate the mixed-use housing, the commercial and the housing, and the open space in the core, transitional, and trade park sub-districts. And I'll come back to the trade park in a minute. One of the big things we took out of all the planning studies is a strong desire on the part of this town to have a place where you can go, gather, and walk. And so you will see throughout this proposal that we are advocating for roadways connections. It is not the zoning and the zoning regulations that drive that. It's something that the town will need to pursue. But we feel that this all works together and in fact creates quite a bit of development opportunities for private businesses, because when you now have two street fronts, street frontage adds a lot of economic value to businesses. So we've listened to a lot of people, and we've tried to not say just what we want in terms of a vision, but what is financeable, what is potentially available to do. So again, you'll see a lot of detail on traditional New England design. We've tried to support sustainable development and environmental projects here, encourage local commercial and economic development, and we have some very specific things about de-incentivizing formula businesses. One of the things in zoning that we've learned is that towns can regulate uses and can regulate design, and in Massachusetts they have very broad authority. We've looked at 3 cases that came up over the last 10 years, Weston, Linfield, and Brookline, in which the ability of towns to regulate design, size, et cetera, have been challenged at the state Supreme Court. In all of those cases, unanimous decisions that these are absolutely what towns are legally able to do. However, you cannot regulate ownership. So while we have design standards around signage and lighting, and we've maintained the prohibition to any there's an existing prohibition against new drive-throughs, and that has been maintained. So we've put things in place, as we call it, to de-incentivize the attractiveness of a wide open space and a drive-through McDonald's, say. We've put those in place. We can't prohibit anyone who wants to buy and operate one of those businesses, but we can control the look, the feel, the size, et cetera. Also, there is many opportunities here that Paul will discuss some of the details around incentivizing opportunities to have mixed use, to have back of the lot housing, whether it be town housing or apartments, and top of the shop housing, where you can have studios and single family homes or single one-bedroom units. Why is that important? One of the things we heard loud and clear from local businesses around this notion of having a year-round vibrant community is we don't have enough population here in the winter, and we don't have a workforce. And how do you create more opportunity? And we know we have a housing crisis. So those 3 things together, we've tried to sort of take those into consideration in terms of how we can maximize the value. Now, creating new housing is obviously a big community issue generally, but for many of these businesses and the local businesses we've talked to, the concept that they might have 3 or 4 apartments above their shop that they could have for workforce is just very, very appealing. And the fact that there may be a few hundred, as we go out over the course of the district, if there's a few hundred more people who are living in this district, people who can walk to and be their customers year-round. So many of these things are, we tried to look at the intersection, the economics of how we can do something that can be financed, built, and meet community needs. So sometimes it felt like playing 3-dimensional chess, where you're trying to think about all the variations. If one thing happens, how does it affect another thing? But that's where we came up with. And the last point I want to make on this is Holmes Road. Again, we're not developers. That is completely privately owned. We took a lot of time looking at the land use there. It's underutilized. It's not in good shape. The roadways are really bad, but it's an enormous amount of land. And the notion that you could encourage emerging businesses which could offer jobs and also have workforce housing and be in walking proximity to this business district, we think has a great deal of value, as well as an opportunity for connector roads, which Paul will discuss, that really takes traffic off Route 6 and really creates a new flow. Task Force research. I'm going to try to get really fast here. We met with a lot of people, and we had 25 meetings as a task force. Jim's probably thrilled he's not the 3-hour meetings. Sometimes every week we're killing them. We met with local businesses, local developers, and we tried to take into account all of the various inputs that they were giving to us. We also did quite a bit of consultation with town council. So what we are proposing here passes muster, at least with our town council. And just for any zoning amendment that ever gets passed in Eastham, one of the things that happens once town votes is it goes up to the Attorney General. And the Attorney General needs to certify it's legal. So any zoning amendment that has ever been passed here goes through an Attorney General process. We just learned today, which is really going to be quite helpful, that the current Attorney General is inviting people to submit their zoning proposals before town meeting, so she can opine and let us know if there's going to be any issues, because it's obviously very awkward if you pass something in May, and this year we didn't get verification that our zoning proposals last year were solidified till December. So you're sort of in this 6-month period of not really knowing. So hopefully that will be resolved. As I said, if you look at the 80-page document, you'll see that there's a lot of language and intent that has not been changed in the current ECSD. There's two acronyms that float around here, DCPC and ECSD. We sort of have defaulted to DCPC. It's just a little more, they're the same things. And again, I want to say, the Cape Cod Commission, one of the things when you collaborate with the Cape Cod Commission under their legislation, it gives a lot of opportunity. They have been tremendous help. Staff from the commission have participated probably in 2/3 of our meetings. We've had tons of consultation. They have created model bylaws that we looked at. They gave us a lot of examples. Anything we approve has to be approved by the commission and has to be approved by the town. So, excuse me, so we are really trying to, we've been trying to calibrate that relationship, but it has been very collaborative. A couple of the studies that we dug deep into and we wanted to just to highlight here. Excuse me. The housing crisis. There was a housing production plan that was updated and approved by the Select Board in January of 2024. All of this is online. It's really a concerning analysis. It was based on the 2020 census, and it looked at housing. I looked it up this morning. Between 2010 and 2023, you can see the dramatic rise in the average price. I looked at it today. It's up to $829,000 is the median price, a 12% increase in 1 year. So we know that the economics of building luxury condos is very strong. We're at a juncture with our town in terms of the number of part-time residents and the displacement of long-term residents that we really need to rebalance in such a way. So again, no mandates, but we're really trying to focus and be strategic on how we can achieve these goals. Couple other points I will just mention. We say there's a loss of almost 300 rental units. It's actually closer to 400 now. And people will say, well, where do we have rental units? What has happened traditionally is those rental units have been in the single-family homes all through our community. They were just available for year-round rentals. So we've always had a large population of people who've rented here and who've lived here. Because of the economics of short-term rentals, and you can, get $6,000, $10,000 a week for your rentals, it has upended the market. And so, and it has priced out many of our young families. We have rising poverty rates, we have an aging population, we have a significant loss of population between the ages of 25 and 34. The workforce population is disappearing, and that's a really difficult situation. And how do we recreate these rental units when 96% of our housing stock is single-family homes, and those homes are, Carolyn maybe and Paul, we can talk about if people have questions about housing. Again, we're not sort of managing the housing initiatives. The town is doing many things around, many projects around thinking about how we can incentivize affordable housing or support owners to rent year-round within the community, because we do think that's going to be valuable. We also know that we will need to have some concentrated areas where we actually do some small-scale developments throughout the business district to make up that loss, because even with ADUs and leasing subsidies, et cetera, it would be great if the town could, start to get some of these programs going. But the reality is, if we got 10 or 20 units in a year, that would probably be a banner year. But we'd be decades before we'd start making up for the loss of the housing. We have the lowest subsidized housing inventory on the Lower and Outer Cape, and we have a whole set of housing that's a missing middle. Another study that is on the website is the market study. This was done in 2021. This is another study that I strongly advise people to take a look at. It talks about how some of the obvious, we're dominated by small businesses, the shortage of year-round customer base, the sort of emerging blue economy around marine and environmental services. We don't have spaces for those. Our current commercial stock, again, I mentioned, is 60 and 70 years old. It's going to need to be replaced. The study in 2021, based on the population, anticipated that we could only have 25,000 square foot of new business development, again, tied to the fact that we don't have the population base to support the business development. And we have retail leakage. One of the things they looked at was, and this market study was looking at Eastham, was not looking at sort of the whole Outer Cape, is what can we absorb. And they were able to calculate this $59 million worth of economic activity that's going to Orleans, principally Orleans and Mid-Cape, that we are not capturing here. So again, all of these are the variables that we're trying to consider. I'm afraid I'm going to start coughing again. Excuse me. Other constraints. Much of this is feedback we heard from businesses and developers. The septic systems. The whole septic system is an issue. Our zoning considers wastewater, but it's not dependent on wastewater. There's a difference here. If the town doesn't, the town is principally doing wastewater because it is responding to an environmental mandate. It just so happens that the area in which the environmental problems are happening also coincide with the business district. So if the town were to address the wastewater, it also provides opportunity for businesses and housing to happen in the same area. Now, if the town does not have a comprehensive wastewater project, that will fall to both residents and businesses to do their own site-specific. Again, that may be what comes to pass. I can't predict that, but it'll add to the cost of development, because all of those developers will then need to build either mini treatment plants or alternative systems, and the constraints around the cost is important. Internet connectivity has been mentioned several times, decreasing workforce population. And I think the other thing we heard a lot from developers was the cost of financing and the cost of construction materials. And so we've been in an inflationary period, financing costs are very high, and construction materials have been very high. And unfortunately right now, there's a lot of discussion that inflation may grow a lot more. And one of the stats that I was looking at was that 30% of our wood that's used on the Cape comes from Canada. So we need to sort of think about what happens, in tariff. I don't want to get into politics, but it will have an economic consequence for us. The other service industries, when we're looking at this market study, again, why, if we have such limited population and limited, workforce, why would a Dollar General, why would a Dunkin' Donuts, why would anyone want to build here, if the economics are so difficult? When those companies are coming in and looking at Eastham and looking at land opportunities, they're not thinking about the Eastham market. They're thinking about the corridor that runs from Provincetown to Orleans, and they're looking at the through traffic there, and they're making calculations. Oh, we're going to get a lot of, we're going to get a lot of business and do well. That's fine, but it doesn't advance our desires to have community character and a walkable business district. So there's that tension there. And again, the second home buyers, again, there's sort of, seems like an endless demand for luxury condos. That we all know is contributing, is pricing people out. So again, how do we disincentivize or incentivize and give people give businesses and developers an opportunity? And you'll see, Paul will talk about a few things here. We have some modest height increases. Again, the front and back lot frontages. There's a variety of things that we've tried to do in this proposal that will give developers and local businesses more opportunity around this district. I'm not going to go into this. We took, you're going to see, and Paul will talk about, we took into consider the wastewater, the roadway improvements, financial analysis, and the corridor plans. Again, we are not the developers. What we are doing in this proposal is we're providing the zoning, or we're proposing the zoning that would allow these things to happen. We can't drive whether they will happen or not, but the zoning will be in place, the framework will be in place that this could in fact happen. So I'm going to hand it over to Paul right now. Again, we're going to have questions as soon as we get through this, but thank you for your patience with my...
Thank you, Mary. Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to thank you for coming out and spending the afternoon with us. Really appreciate your time. And as Mary said, I'm going to go through some of the details of what's actually in the proposed zoning amendments. So just quickly, we've been talking about this concept of form-based code. And as Mary mentioned, we're not throwing out the whole bylaw that is, the majority of it is staying in place. What we're trying to do is go in and kind of tactically add and augment the language to make it more specific where it needs to be, so we can set expectations for both property owners, developers, and for the boards and committees that are, charged with administrating this bylaw, so that things are clear and predictable. We get a predictable development pattern over time that really results in what the feedback we've heard of a more traditional New England style village center over time developing in Eastham. So form-based code, as you saw in the video, we're trying to put in, hopefully simplify language, convert things from long paragraphs of zoning text to charts, graphs, pictures, to make it more user-friendly. But the content is really remaining the same, and the intent and purpose is really remaining the same with what we've had on the books for a number of years now. So to get into some specifics, we are proposing some specific changes to the actual zoning districts, the sub-districts that Mary mentioned. Specifically on the tea time property, as Mary mentioned, it's not zoned for the kinds of things that we've heard that the community wants on that site. And so we want to change that from limited commercial transition to a transition commercial sub-district. Again, it'll allow a greater variety and diversity of options there, which is what we had a lot of feedback from the town over the last few years about managing the uses there. Again, specifically, some properties on Route 6 on the west side, which are currently they're right on Route 6, so high visibility, very important commercial properties, but right now they're actually zoned office residential, which is the least intense, has the most limited uses. And we just looked at the map and said it really doesn't make sense to have it where you have directly across the street is the most intense, where we want the heart of the village center to be, and directly across the street would be really imbalanced. So recommending some changes there so that there's consistency in that core commercial area. And finally, on Brackett Road, the properties that are just on the other side of Holmes Road, in between Holmes Road and the bike path, right now they are, we want to bring those into the core commercial, again, to have better alignment with the rest of Brackett Road. And as you saw in the video, and we'll talk about in some subsequent slides, the vision for Brackett Road, we're trying to, this whole district, we want to be the village center, but Brackett Road is really the opportunity we see where that could really be the classic Main Street. Over time, as things get redeveloped, you got your sidewalks, you got your buildings closer to the road, and we want to make sure that we maximize. It's a limited space. There's not that much of it. So we want to make sure that those properties have opportunity to maximize the potential of their business potential over time. So those are those are really the only changes to the actual zoning map that we're proposing. Another element that we're proposing to change or tweak is the use table itself. So as we mentioned, form-based code isn't so much focused on the uses. Our traditional zoning is residential here, commercial there, industrial over there. It really segregates the uses. What we're trying to put into the bylaw is we're more concerned with how things are going to look, because that's really what impacts our interaction with the streetscape and so forth. So we're taking the opportunity to actually try to simplify the use code. We definitely want to keep certain things segregated. You don't want to mix up your industrial uses and the residential, obviously, things like that. So we're keeping the basic structure, but what we can do is actually consolidate the use table, make it shorter, make it a little more user-friendly. And just as an example, right now we have a long laundry list of all kinds of uses: convenience store, gift shop, barber shop, all kinds of things. All of those things are essentially retail sales and service. So we don't need to list everything under the sun. We couldn't, obviously, even if we tried. So really just simplifying the use table. A couple other things that we do want to add into the use table, though, is to make sure that we're allowing the types of housing that we need to be specifically permitted. And so we're adding in specific uses for multifamily housing and mixed-use housing. So top-of-the-shop apartments, things like that would be clearly marked in the use table as allowed. And as Mary mentioned, we're taking the opportunity to kind of strengthen some of the current prohibitions that we already have. So we don't allow new gas stations and we don't allow new drive-throughs in town, with the exception of banks. We're really just taking the opportunity to say that, strengthen the language, is to make it clear that those kinds of uses will continue to be prohibited. And really, it's a community character issue, but it's also, those types of uses are obviously high traffic generators, and we have a huge traffic issue with Route 6, which we're working on parallel to all this thing. So we don't want to introduce or have uses that are not compatible with the vision of this corridor. Housing, as I just mentioned, we're putting things specifically into the use table to allow for specific housing, what we term missing middle housing. So 96% of our housing stock is single-family homes. In order to meet the housing needs, we need to be able to allow different types of units to be built, and that's what we collectively call missing middle. So everything in between a large-scale apartment building and a single-family home, those things in the middle, that's what we're missing. ADUs, duplexes, smaller cottage courts, townhouses, those types of developments. We are proposing some modest height bonuses, very much targeted to just the types of housing that we need. So, for example, if someone were going to build a mixed-use building, commercial restaurant stores on the first floor, apartments on the second floor, you would get a height bonus, which would allow you to go from our current height limit of 30 feet to 35 feet. A modest increase, but what we've heard from developers is that that small adjustment provides a lot of opportunity to fit an extra unit. You can really like squeeze an extra unit, some extra space in there, which again, when you try to pencil all this out, it makes a big difference when people are trying to finance this, build a new building, add some additional revenue to augment their business and so forth. So these would be limited to year-round rentals, seasonal workforce rentals, or deed-restricted affordable housing units. So it's very targeted, so you would have to basically have a deed restriction on that property in order to get the height bonus. And similarly for multifamily houses, multifamily buildings or townhouse buildings, there's the opportunity to go to 39 feet. That is very targeted and limited to only the residential, limited residential, just blanking on the, trade park and limited commercial sub-districts. Those areas are areas where we feel can absorb a little more housing density, and you can have some taller buildings that are going to be set well back from Route 6. And as we'll get into when we talk about roadway connections and opening up some new areas for development, we feel it would still fit in with the character of the town, but allowing a building to go to 39 feet, especially when we're talking about multifamily, really changes the economics, makes it really viable for a developer to put in multifamily housing, make it pencil out. And we specifically looked at developments up in P-Town and a few spread around the Cape where there's some magic numbers in housing. 39 feet and being able to go to 3 stories and having at least 65 units, these are the magic numbers that really make projects viable. I don't want to scare anyone with these numbers. Baked into all of this, yes, we're allowing possibly buildings to get taller, but baked into all this is all of the other things that we're going through, all these form-based code elements where the impact of the increased height is mitigated by the architectural standards, the materials, the roof pitches, all these things to make sure that we're not going to be building big boxes and, old school, old style affordable housing developments. We want it to look appropriate for Eastham. So please keep that in mind as you look at these numbers. I don't want anyone to get scared off. It is a bold concept, but really what we found is it's absolutely necessary in order to make these projects viable, in order to get folks to be able to invest and develop into their property. So I guess I'll leave it at that for now. As I just mentioned, a big piece of this is architectural design standards. We are proposing requirements to use traditional materials. There is some flexibility built in to the proposals to allow for some non-traditional materials that still look appropriate, and even in certain limited instances where we're really trying to disincentivize using vinyl siding and kind of things that aren't really New England character. There are some opportunities, again, where things are going to have no visibility to the public, where a developer or a property owner will have some leeway to work with the town to say, this is going to be too expensive. We need to cut back. So we're not trying to be draconian with the regulations. We don't actually want to have cookie cutter district where everyone's using the same design, same materials. We want a variety. That's part of what makes Eastham special, but some basic parameters. So again, predictability and the expectations, what a developer, what a property owner knows, what the expectations are going into a project, so there's no surprises. So materials, again, I mentioned roof forms, one of the examples of the form-based code. How I look at this form-based code concept, it's a recipe. We're telling you what the ingredients are, what the roof forms are, what the building materials are, what the basic size and shapes of the buildings are supposed to be. Within that, there's still a lot of opportunity to get creative and get unique with the designs. But you follow the recipe, you're going to be able to get your projects approved with a lot easier and a lot faster going through the regulatory process. So that's the way I look at this form-based code. There's a lot of existing language in the current bylaw about environmental standards and landscape standards. We're basically keeping everything that's in there, just augmenting and clarifying the language. This whole area also overlaps with our Water Resource Protection District, our Zone 2, which is our drinking water supply zone. So we want to make sure that we're careful about, as we're developing the commercial zone, we got to protect the Water Resource District, and obviously we want to meet the challenges of the coming decades with climate adaptation and conserving energy and so forth. So again, just listed some of the things that were in the bylaw that we're trying to augment and clarify. Lighting and signs. So we have a whole separate section in the zoning bylaw currently that covers signs in the sign code. What we're proposing, though, is to add some specific language tailored just to this DCPC zoning district. And again, this is rooted in the form-based code, having some uniformity throughout the district and making sure that the signage and the lighting is harmonious with the overall design of the redeveloped properties and also with the town, within the community character itself. So just to give you some examples, we're trying to just limit the impact of moving signs and neon signs and so forth. And again, but it's more really about creating a harmonious design overall with the buildings, the parking, the landscaping, the signs and the lighting are a huge piece of that. So we want to make sure that we address those accordingly. In the video, it talked about a new transportation network. We mentioned Brackett Road. As I said, that's really the opportunity where you can sort of envision, a more classic Main Street. Route 6, we got to do work on Route 6. That absolutely needs to be upgraded with safety, and that's part of the plan. But Route 6 is always going to be a throughway, and we don't control it. The state controls it. So we're making progress on that, but we have to look to what do we control? What are the local roadways? And that comes back to Brackett Road, where that's our opportunity to have really that classic Main Street where the parking is located in the back of the building, so we're not looking at a sea of pavement. That gives you room to move the buildings up closer to the sidewalk, street trees, so forth. All of the places where, all the other towns have that Main Street. We don't have that, and this is an opportunity to try to get that over time. So just, again, illustrating the potential. This is just a rendering showing what the potential zoning would allow for. There's also the opportunity to think about a new Main Street, and this has been talked about in town. I've been here 10 years, and this has been talked about the whole time I've been here. This dream of, can we connect Brackett Road and now to Tea Time, but to any extent, to have some sort of parallel roadway to Route 6, to take the edge off Route 6 so you can have some local traffic, some local pedestrian bike activity. The town has Town Center Plaza, which has an easement onto Brackett Road, and the town owns Tea Time. We control the two ends. And I'm happy to say we've been talking with all the businesses in between over a number of months. There's been positive feedback about the potential. Again, lots of details that aren't worked out, but I think of all the time I've been here, we've never been closer to actually maybe having something like this come together where we could actually create some sort of new connection. It may be a road, it may be a 2-lane road, it may be a one-way street, it may be just a bike path or some combination, but having a connection that'll take the pressure off Route 6, and again, that's a huge piece of creating this cohesive village center. And as Mary mentioned, the potential benefits to those private properties in between could be enormous, because you have 2 street frontages, you have an opportunity to diversify your business model, break things up, sell off a piece, whatever, so as these properties continue to get to the point where they're going to need to be updated, the buildings themselves, and folks that own the businesses and land, they're going to transition. It opens up opportunities a lot wider than what is there in the current zoning. So this is a key piece for the whole concept of the village center. And again, accommodating business opportunities with a mixed use top-of-the-shop housing, multifamily buildings, all connecting Brackett Road to Tea Time. The last piece of this transportation network is Holmes Road. As Mary mentioned, Holmes Road has a lot of potential. And a lot of the feedback I've heard over the years is that we don't have enough trade space. Holmes Road is our only industrial area. There's nowhere else in town you can operate any kind of business like that. The good news is there's a lot of space to grow on Holmes Road, both with what you see there now, but at the end of Holmes Road, there's many, many acres of undeveloped property. Again, we've been in talks with the owner of that property about the future and had some positive feedback, but the vision for that is, can we upgrade Holmes Road? Can we connect the end of Holmes Road back out to Route 6 and have an alternative to take the pressure again off Route 6? And can that area accommodate, and we believe it can, accommodate a combination of increased trade space with some mixed use and multifamily housing? And that brings me back to what I was mentioning earlier with the height bonuses. That whole area from the end of Holmes Road, and really if you try to picture behind the Sheridan, behind Ocean Park Motel, behind some of those properties that are front on Route 6, there's a lot of land back there with a lot of potential. And that area could accommodate housing and trade space and become a whole neighborhood unto itself, rooted in this form-based code, so nicely designed buildings, matching the community character, but absorbing some more density and off of Route 6. That area is really key because it's adjacent to, if wastewater it does go into, it's going to be adjacent to where we're putting the wastewater in, which is key to the housing issue. I mentioned Route 6, so a whole roadway that would not be reliant on Route 6 and adjacent to the bike path for pedestrian access. And really this goes beyond, again, it might be a roadway, it might be a two-lane roadway, a one-way street, a bike path, any kind of connection. We want to set ourselves up so that those are possibilities we can explore in the future to support the zoning. So a lot of information, we've gone through it fast. We're going to have time for question and answers. I just want to wrap up with, as you saw from Mary's presentation, a lot of work has gone into this, and I have to really tip my hat to the Zoning Task Force. This group puts the time in, does the homework. There's no way we would be able to come forth with these proposals. There's no way I would be able to do it, our staff would be doing it on our own, so I tip my hat to that group, and Mary's been leading that group for a number of years, so I just want to make sure everyone's aware of the hard work they put into this. Going for, and so much work that they've had in the meetings prior, but going forward, obviously today's the public information session. We mentioned that all of these proposals have to be approved by the Cape Cod Commission, so we actually have a public hearing scheduled tomorrow afternoon where these topics will be discussed. We anticipate approval by the Commission. Again, we've been working hand in hand with them, so I anticipate good feedback from them. I will be here at the library on March 4th for open office hours, so again, feel free to come back if you don't get a chance to talk in detail, or let everyone know. Myself and staff will be here from 4 to 7. Again, just open office hours, questions, anything you want to talk about. The official planning board public hearing, so this culminates in May at town meeting, but the planning board will have its official public hearing as part of the whole formal process. That will be March 19th at Town Hall at 4 o'clock. Again, we'll have a probably a little less intense presentation, but again, it'll be an opportunity for folks to come in, learn about it, ask questions. Comments are welcome anytime between now and March 19th. Comments are welcome. And then we will have our pre-town meeting. So again, another opportunity to preview this in April. I don't have the exact date for that, but it will be in April. And again, culminating May 5th, town meeting. All of this needs to be approved by the community at town meeting. So that's the upcoming schedule, and it's exactly 5 o'clock, miraculously. And I will leave it there, and we have some time for questions and answers. And I didn't hand them out. Anyone is welcome to come up to the microphone if you have a question. If anyone wants to use the sheets we have, if you don't feel comfortable coming up, you can write down your question. I'll answer it up here. But again, thank you very much for your time and attention and for coming out tonight.
That was great, thank you. Parking. Oh, it's way over my head, I don't know. Yeah, it worked, yeah. So the parking that goes with this, I assume like if there's a restaurant being put in, it's some kind of standard parking metric based on number of seats in the restaurant, you have to have so many parking spots. But if you go to towns like Provincetown, Wellfleet, Orleans, Chatham, they also have big town-owned parking areas, and I'm just concerned when it gets into the seasonal world and the crowds come in and there's a couple of restaurants that have bands or something going on, and is there enough thought of considering overflow parking during the in-season time frame, so that we don't, because I don't see any way to correct it. If we don't set aside land now for overflow parking, like how do you fix it if you end up having a problem?
Well, I think what the zoning anticipates, the proposals anticipate, is that we want to have shared infrastructure and shared parking wherever possible. A key component of that is going to be the tea time and the town center plaza sites that are owned by the town, where hopefully we can accommodate some of that I wouldn't say overflow parking, but shared general parking to take the pressure off of the other smaller
Right.
developments. So we don't want all those businesses along there to, every time someone redevelops, put in another 10 lot parking, another 20 lot parking, and have all these curb cuts and everything. We want to combine the curb cuts, have the shared parking and the shared circulation, so that overall the district can absorb the parking needs in general. And again, with that possible new roadway and sidewalks and everything, you don't have to drive 10 feet over every time, which is what we all do now. You get out, you walk, you go to the restaurant, you go over to the store, you're walking throughout the
Right.
the district. That's the intention.
I guess, is there a way to assess that, just like, how do you know when you, and this is like the problem, this will creep on us, like, 10 years, maybe, I don't know what condition this will be in, 20 years it gets further built out, and all of a sudden it gets tighter and tighter potentially on parking. I don't know how to think about it, but
Yeah.
like, how do you know when you lay out all these diagrams that you're not gonna know 100%, but how do you get comfort that you're covered on parking? That's all because there's no way to, in this tiny enclosed district, there's no flexibility. And you see all the other towns have that room. It's just something to think about. It's hard, I can't get my head around it. The other question is it legally permissible to ban seasonal rentals in this? Can we do that legally if we wanted to as a town? Seasonal rentals.
There,
No, it's a legal
well,
question.
there are, I guess I don't want to, that's a whole other spirited discussion we could have. I just
But
don't.
it's key to the.
I guess to answer
what you
your
put in.
question is, the zoning allows you to have certain guardrails and controls over rental. Again, I don't want to go off on the tangent too much, but that's something that the town could look at.
Well, but you guys chose not to. It's a yes or no on the legal side. I think it
Well,
is.
yes, I guess to answer your question, yes, but it's something that needs to be tailored to the community, because it's a balance between what the housing needs are and what the commercial needs
No,
are.
I like what you did with housing. I was, because you have if you get the bonus space opportunity, and if you want to go to 35 or 39 feet, and then you can restrict it to full-time rentals. That's great. And I love the unit sizes that you put in
Yeah.
too. But I just had a question, if the town wanted to go a step further and get ahead of this seasonal rental, is it yes or no legally?
Well-
And it sounds like we can legally if we wanted to.
Legally you can regulate use. Legally you can, and this has been an issue that Nantucket is in court right now, and they're appealing. The
Okay.
land court did say to Nantucket, you shouldn't have seasonal rentals in residential neighborhoods because they were considered commercial, the
Yeah.
Airbnbs, et cetera. So that has been appealed, and we've been watching that closely to sort of
Okay.
get clarity on where that comes down. Last year, we made some proposals around short-term rentals, and it may be something that the select board has us go back, and we didn't look at that this year.
Okay.
But we're watching what comes out of Nantucket and what the final ruling is there.
Okay, thanks.
So I just wanted to say thank you to both Paul and Mary, because this is clearly a very impressive and thorough presentation. As a young year-round resident, and there's not that many of us, and member of the workforce, I'm just really excited and kind of heartened to see that there's so much attention to housing and just kind of a sustainable year-round community. And I'm glad that there's a lot of attention to detail, and that a lot of research and foresight is being shown by the task force and by the town going into this. But I guess one of my questions is, I know you said this is a very slow process, and we can't change a lot of that, but it's really tough to see these large parcels of land just kind of sitting unused, and I think a lot of people feel that way. And just given how critical the need for housing is right now, is there anything that we can do as individuals and community members to kind of like just help ease or speed this process along so that we can like actually maximize the pace of this development or some of these changes happening? And I know so much of it is so complex, but it would just be nice to kind of feel like we're finally making progress. But like, I also just mean like literally, I'm not meaning that as a criticism, because like so much of that is even beyond, I'm sure, what we think about or even know like all the things that have to go into it. But I'm just wondering if there's things that we can show up for, or things that we can kind of get involved in, or is there openings on committees, or like things that need to get done or advocated for that we can do to kind of like get some of this stuff going.
Thank you. I guess I'll try to address the first part. It has been a slow process, but everything that's been happening over the many years has been part of a broader plan. And I think we're getting to the part where you're going to start to see progress. So a lot of planning, a lot of studying, a lot of research has been done, as you saw from all the studies. But we're getting to the point where this is going to start to culminate in some tangible things. The zoning is the framework, as Mary mentioned. That's going to allow us to go forward with everything else. So the zoning and the wastewater, and there's going to be decisions to be made on those two critical items at town meeting. So a lot of what happens and the timing for what you're mentioning is reliant upon what happens with those two things. But I will say,
I don't know why it sat down. Mike, so just to confirm, if the wastewater doesn't happen, this will be a lot more difficult and slower of a process? Most likely? You can't say for sure?
well, yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
okay.
I think, I'm only hesitating because we don't know what will happen on the private property, you know, what will happen. So I really speak to what the town-controlled properties. And we are really looking to the potential of, if we have wastewater in that area, comprehensive wastewater system in that area, that's going to allow the types of development that we've heard is wanted on these properties, the mix of uses, the housing and the mix of uses that is desired on Tea Time and Town Center Plaza, that combination. And, but the only way to get increased housing is wastewater. So whether it's a comprehensive sewer system or a combination of things, forward movement has to happen on wastewater. It's just that, so that's just bottom line with anything with housing, but also really with any commercial. I mean, everybody along that stretch is maxed out. You can't add another bar stool at any of these restaurants. You can't add another table. You can't add an apartment upstairs to have your employees live. So something has to happen. It's just waiting to see what path it's going to lead down to. That's dependent on town meeting. To address your other issue, there's always room for folks to come to these meetings, to volunteer on boards and committees. I'm happy and proud to say Eastham has a very, very committed following of folks that are on these boards and committees. And as I said, the folks that are on the zoning task force, multi-hour meetings all year long, and that also goes for our regulatory board. So I can just say that if you're looking to get interested, contact the search committee. There's lots of opportunities, but obviously all these town meetings are always open to the public and open for public comment, and that's a really quick and easy way to get your voice heard on these matters. So did I answer your was there another part of the question?
No, thank you. I appreciate that. So it sounds like we need to advocate for wastewater. Great.
Paul, can I offer one other
Yeah, please.
comment? Sorry, I'm Jackie O'Rourke. I work alongside Paul as a community development planner. Just the other answer to that question is please come to town meeting and bring all of your registered voting Easthamians. Yes. We need people to come to town meeting.
Hey,
Paul,
Darren.
are these proposals, do they require 2/3 majority at town meeting?
Yes. I know you had your hand up.
Thank you. This has been very helpful, and I'm grateful for the decades of work that it seems have gone into this, and like town workers that keep this moving even as people come and go. Appreciate it. I think I just want to clarify and ask a question. So as far as I can tell, the question that's up in May is not whether or not those beautiful renderings are going to be built the way that they're being shown, whether or not there's a street that's going to be built, whether or not there's going to be a parking lot that's going to be built, whether or not there's a grocery store that's going to be built. All we're doing in May is saying yes or no, we'd like to rezone these pieces of property so that those ideas might take effect, but there are no plans for any of those things because those would come along after you rezone. Nobody's pitching an idea for what they want to build until the thing has been rezoned so that that thing can be built there. And so, which is fine. I think I have that right.
Exactly, yeah.
And what happens in May if we don't vote for this rezoning?
The question no one wants to answer. Well, we have existing, as I say, a lot of the zoning, we're not changing a lot of the zoning. We're trying to augment it and clarify it and strengthen it where we feel it needs to be. So if it doesn't pass, I don't want to spin this like the wrong way. I think it's very, very important, and I very much advocate that we pass this. But worst case scenario, if it doesn't, we just simply stick with the zoning we have now, which does, provide certain guardrails, but they're not guardrails against unwanted development and so forth, but it doesn't have, it's not going to be as strong, and it's not going to be as, I would say, I don't want to say user-friendly, but it's harder to work with. And again, part of this is to communicate to businesses, property owners, residents, like, we're giving you the recipe for how to redevelop your property, maximize your investment in the easiest way possible, so you don't have a lot of hearings and a lot of revisions and spending a lot of money on plan reworking. So that's really a primary benefit. I'm probably forgetting 100 things that Mary's going to mention, but
I think maybe what I'm hearing, and sorry, I would love to hear what you have to say also, but what I'm hearing is that the existing zone, if this doesn't pass, the existing zoning would stay in place, which means that you would be looking at piecemeal development within the current constraints, no beautiful road, no setbacks, no housing, because you actually still have the same wastewater treatment issues and maxed out capacity issues of all the places. So not only are we still looking at a big environmental problem for the existing town, you're also no longer able to grow it because of this wastewater issue that's going to get addressed within the rezoning, or would be easier to address within the rezoning.
Well, I mean, I think there's two critical things in terms of passing this, and, tea time is not appropriately zoned right now for mixed-use development. So all of that incredible master planning that went in over numbers of years with all that community process, the zoning does not allow it. So we sort of have to do that. And the second thing, as I started, I was being a little, facetious, but it's true. You can say, we want a traditional New England village. Oh, go see some guidelines. There's no specificity. So developers can come in and, you're in a very difficult situation when there's no detail in terms of design and materials, et cetera. You're sort of on a case-by-case basis, sort of arguing out with a particular developer what it'll look like. And, the idea that you can, at the end of the day, 10 years from now, it'll all sort of look comprehensively like it fits, is going to be a crapshoot. So those are really some of the two biggest reasons to pass this.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
But thank you all for coming. Thank you.